Now firstly we look at the selection of a partner through hadith. Now it is mentioned in a hadith which can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari, very famous hadith, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that tunkahu al-mar'atu li arba'in, that a woman is married for 4 reasons. Tunkahu al-mar'atu li arba'in, that a woman is married for 4 reasons. Limadiha, that she is married for her wealth. Walihasabiha, she is married because of her rank, because of her status. Wali jamaliha, she is married because of her beauty. And wali diniha, and she is married because of her piety and taqwa. And then at the end Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Fasdar bi zati din taribat yadak," i.e. choose the possessor of piety and achieve success. Now from this particular hadith, we can see that there are 4 guidelines which Islam has laid down for the selection of a girl, for selection of a partner, for the selection of a husband, and so on. And out of those 4 criteria, there are 3 which we should look at. They shouldn't be ignored. We should look at them. But the important one is the last one, and that is piety and taqwa. Meaning that if we intend to get married to a girl, or we're looking for a girl, or a sister, a Muslim sister is looking for a man or a brother, then in that situation, we shouldn't look at how much money he or she earns. We shouldn't look at, with regards to their status, that whether they are from a high background, whether they are from a posh background. We shouldn't look at their status. We shouldn't look at their beauty, that whether the sister is very beautiful or whether the brother is beautiful or handsome. We shouldn't look at that. But what we should look at is piety and taqwa. That whether the brother is pious or not, or whether the Muslim sister is pious or not. Okay, we should look at piety, and that should be the underlying reason why we get married to that, or why we have chosen that particular girl, or why we have chosen that particular brother, and so on. Okay. As I said, the other 3 things which have been mentioned in the hadith, i.e. wealth, limaliha, rank, wali hasabiha, and beauty, wali jamaliha. These 3 things should be looked at. Okay, as I said, you shouldn't ignore these 3 criteria. That you should look at the status of that particular girl, or you should look at the status of should look at the wealth, that whether the girl is wealthy or not, or you should also look at the beauty. Because obviously these 3 things will help and will encourage or will assist the husband, or will assist the boy in loving his wife, will assist the relationship to be more closer and to be more peaceful and tranquil. So these 3 things should be looked at. However, the underlying reason should be taqwa, should be piety, that whether the Muslim sister is pious or not, or whether the Muslim brother is pious or not, these or that thing or that quality should be the underlying feature why we have married that particular brother, or why we have married that particular sister. If we go on to the next page where we looked at wealth, family, rank and beauty, so it's just the conclusion what I have just told you, and that is that obviously the wealth, we shouldn't just marry a particular sister or marry a particular brother just because of wealth. Now, just because he's rich and so on, we shouldn't marry that person. Okay. Similarly, just because of their family rank, we shouldn't marry that particular person, or just because of beauty, we shouldn't marry that particular person. But the main thing we should look at is with regards to piety and taqwa, that whether that Muslim sister is pious or not, or whether that Muslim brother is pious or not. So that is the conclusion of selecting a partner when we look at it through the hadith angle. Now the next one that is more important, and that is the selection of a partner looking at it through the fiqh angle, or looking at it through Hanafi jurisprudence. Now the issue which we are going to look at is something which is known as compatibility. That there are some nikah, or there are some women with whom you are not allowed to marry. Okay, obviously, if you do get married, then the marriage will be done. However, it is not compatible for the girl to marry that particular boy. Okay. Now, before I explain the importance of the masalas which are in front of us, I'm just going to very briefly just mention a few things regarding compatibility and kafa'ah. Now, compatibility is something which is important in Islam. And due to this compatibility, or because of this compatibility, that will be the key for the everlasting marriage. Okay, if the boy and girl, if they are not compatible, then that would not be the recipe for a happy and everlasting marriage. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran has said, الرجال قوامون على النساء, that men are the caretakers of women. That men, they are the caretakers of women. Now before I explain that verse, I'll give you some examples. In a company or in an institution, you always need a leader. Even like, for example, in school, you have like year 7, year 8. Then even all the teachers who are in year 7, they will have a kind of supervisor. Similarly, all the teachers are in year 8, they will have a supervisor. So whatever industry, whatever company, whatever institution you're working for, there will always be a leader. And the importance of a leader is that if there are any disputes, if there are any problems, then that leader will be on hand to solve the problem. That leader on hand will be ready to resolve the dispute. So having a leader is very important. And that leader has to be something special about that leader. Okay? You can't have someone who's like a child, someone who's a kid, or someone who's not that knowledgeable. You can't have him as a leader. That's why we see that in major companies, in major industries and institutions, the person who's got the most experience, the person who has the most knowledge of that field, he will be the leader. He will be like the chairman, he will have the high post. It's like, for example, in a school, the person who's taught that particular subject the most number of times or for the most number of years, he will be kind of leader of that particular, or he will be the head of English, or he will be the head of science and so on. Why? Because he has more knowledge regarding that field and he has more experience regarding that field. Now the exact same reasons are used in giving the role of the leader of a household to a man. The household, that is also like a company. A household is also like an institution. So like any other companies and any other institutions, you need a leader. So similarly, in a household, you need a leader. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His infinite wisdom, has decided that a man, a rijal, that a man, he will be the leader of the women. That if there are any issues at home, if there is some kind of problems at home, or something with regards to regarding the child or the children or the daughter or the son, then obviously you should take mashwara and you should also take consultation of your wife. However, the ultimate decision should be down to the husband. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ, that the men and the husbands, they will be the leader of the family. And as we just already looked at, that a leader has to be someone who has something distinctive about it. There's some kind of feature regarding the leader. If you have the woman as a leader, or if you have, say, the woman who is more knowledgeable or who is more distinct than the man, then there will be a clash. There is no compatibility there, there will be a clash. So therefore, like what I'm trying to say is that a man, he is the leader of the household. So therefore, the man, he has to be either similar or compatible with the woman, or the woman or the girl has to be lesser than the man in compatibility. Because obviously if you have a situation where the woman is more higher than the man, then obviously the woman wouldn't like to be under the leadership of a man who happens to be socially less than her in terms of like the social well-being or in the community. So that will kind of cause problems and disputes later on. So what I'm trying to say is that when in marriage, this is also a very important part. And that is that the girl or the woman, she has to be compatible, or other men or the man or the husband has to be compatible with the girl, or has to be compatible with the woman, and not the girl has to be compatible with the man. Okay? Now, keeping that in mind, we need to look at the issue of compatibility, which is on this slide in front of us. Now, firstly, in matters of lineage, the lineage of the father is considered and not the mother. Now, when we look at lineage, when we look at compatibility, then we look at compatibility from the father's side. So just as an example, if a child or a daughter, say, so the daughter's father is an Arab, but the daughter's mother is a Pakistani. So that daughter will be known as an Arab. Because when it comes to lineage, the father is considered. So for example, if you have a daughter whose father is an Arab, then that daughter will be considered as an Arab. If you have a daughter whose father is a Bangladeshi and the mother is a Pakistani, so that daughter will be considered as Bangladeshi. So when it comes to lineage, we look at the father. Okay? So that is the first ruling, that in matters of lineage, the lineage of the father is considered. So if the father is a Sayyid, the son is also a Sayyid. Sayyid is those who are linked with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or who are the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's family. They are known as Sayyid. So if the father is a Sayyid, then obviously the son will be automatically a Sayyid. Okay? So that is the first ruling. The second ruling is all Arabs are equal to each other. Now what does that mean? It means that all Arabs are equal to each other. So, for example, when it comes to nikah, when it comes to marriage, an Arab girl, she can only get married to an Arab boy. An Arab girl, she can only get married to an Arab boy. Now what do you mean by Arab here? Arab means like from the Arabian Peninsula. Now like for example, Arabs who live in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or in Egypt and so on, they are not considered as the true Arabs. So Arabs like from the Arabian Peninsula, from the Saudi Arabia area, from Yemen, who are known as the true Arabs. So an Arab is a kuf, or is compatible for another Arab. So from this what we understand is that Arab girl can only get married to an Arab boy. Okay? If an Arab girl gets married to a Pakistani boy, then obviously the ruling is coming later. Okay? But generally speaking, in the Hanafi jurisprudence, in Hanafi fiqh, okay, because an Arab, the lineage of Arab is so like pious, because obviously Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was an Arab himself. So because of that reason, all the khulafa, all like Hazrat Abu Bakr anhu, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Usman, Hazrat Ali, they were all Quraysh. They were all from the Arab lineage. So Arab, or being an Arab, is a very, very blessed thing. So therefore, only an Arab girl, her kuf, or her only an Arab boy can be compatible for an Arab girl. So the second ruling here is that all Arabs are equal to each other. Now the third ruling is that besides Arabs, all other ethnic groups such as Bangladeshis and Pakistanis are considered as one group. Okay, now the third ruling, just forget Arabs now. When we come to other ethnic groups besides Arabs, such as Gujaratis, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Somalians, Africans and so on, they are just considered as one. So Arabs, they are just separate by themselves. And then besides Arab, anybody else from ethnic groups like Gujaratis, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Somalians, Africans, Australians and so on, they are just considered as one. Okay? Now, keeping that in mind, if a Pakistani girl gets married to a Bangladeshi boy, then there's nothing wrong with it. Okay? Even though socially it's considered something bad, the people like start, fighting and so on. But generally speaking, according to the laws and rules of Islam, if a Pakistani girl gets married to a Bangladeshi boy, or a Bangladeshi girl gets married to a Pakistani boy, Pakistani girl gets married to a Gujarati boy, there's nothing wrong with it. If a Muslim girl gets married to a convert who was I don't know, who was American before, who was Canadian before, then there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, even though you could say socially, some people may say, oh, it's bad socially. Obviously, fatwa or ruling isn't looked at socially things. We look at what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what the scholars have said. So besides Arabs, all other ethnic groups such as Bangladeshis, Pakistanis are considered as one group. So therefore, if the daughter of a Sayyid gets married with one of them, it will be said that she married someone who is of a lower social standing than her. So if a Sayyid girl, a daughter, Sayyid means like an Arab girl. So if an Arab girl gets married to a Bangladeshi or gets married to a Pakistani, then it will be considered that she has married someone who is socially lower than her. That the social standard between the Arab girl and the Pakistani boy is considered lower. So therefore, such a marriage would not be valid. Okay? Okay, just further elaborating on that point, that the Sayyids, i.e. Arabs, they are suitable matches for one another. That marriages between themselves are correct and permitted without any condition, as appearing in Durr Mukhtar. Durr Mukhtar is a very famous book in Hanafi jurisprudence written by Imam Haskawi rahmatullah alayh, and he has said that and kafa and lineage, thus the Quraysh are suitable matches for one another, as are the other Arabs suitable matches for one another. So Quraysh, the tribes, the Arab tribes and so on, so they are considered as suitable matches for each other. Okay? And the next point which Imam Haskawi rahmatullah alayh has written, that the ruling relevant to non-Arabs is as follows. The Ajmi, i.e. non-Arab, cannot be a match for a woman of Arab descent, no matter that he be an alim, a religious scholar, or even a sultan, a ruling authority. Now what does that mean? It means that an Arab girl, a man, Arab, like an Ajmi, means a non-Arab, he cannot marry an Arab girl, even though that non-Arab happens to be a scholar, or even though that non-Arab happens to be a religious authority, meaning that he happens to be a leader, he happens to be a king of a particular country, even then he is not considered compatible with the Arab girl. Okay? So the conclusion, what I'm trying to say from the couple of slides which I have mentioned, that is that an Arab girl can only marry an Arab boy. And besides Arabs, other ethnic groups such as Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, Gujaratis, they are all considered as one. Okay? Now the question, I'll just give you the answer now. This ruling is coming up later on anyway, but I'll just give you the answer now. And that is that, okay, just say if an Arab girl breaks the rule and she gets married to a non-Arab boy. As we just mentioned, as we have just been looking at now, the Arab girl can only marry an Arab boy. So just say, for example, an Arab girl, she runs away with a Pakistani boy and they get married in secret, what will happen? So obviously the masla or the ruling is that generally speaking, their marriage would be considered invalid. Just generally speaking, according to the rules which I have mentioned, and according to the classical text of Hanafi jurisprudence, you will find that if an Arab girl runs away with a Pakistani boy, with a Bangladeshi boy, then her marriage, her nikah with the boy will be considered invalid. However, in this day and age, because of these occurrences happening a lot, meaning that these things are happening a lot where many non-Arab men, like through the internet and so on, they manage to, or they somehow get in contact with Arab girls, and then they kind of, text each other, email each other, and next thing you know, they got married with each other. So because these things are happening a lot, so therefore the fatwa means the jurisprudence ruling in this day and age is that if an Arab girl gets married to a non-Arab boy, to a Pakistani boy, then her nikah and her marriage will be done. That will be considered valid, and it will not be considered as something bad. It will not be considered as they are fornicating with each other. It will not be considered as a haram or unlawful relationship, but what will happen is that the time they spend together will be considered lawful. Okay? It's an issue which we are going to look at later on. But as I said, just generally speaking, the Hanafi school of thought, it was considered as something impermissible for an Arab girl marrying a non-Arab boy. However, in this day and age, because of the moral decline of society and because of these things happening a lot, therefore the scholars have said that if such a incident happens, then the marriage and the nikah will be done. Okay. Now the next section which we are going to look at, there isn't, there's nothing on the course book with regards to this particular section, but I've mentioned it on the slide and I've also given some handouts, and that is with regards to looking at a prospective suitor. Now what does that mean? Obviously we try to, alhamdulillah, the course has been designed such a way that we try to go in order. So obviously we looked at the ruling of marriage, then a person decides to get married, so obviously we looked at what kind of girls he should look for. Obviously he should look for a pious girl, and then obviously we looked at the issue of compatibility, that you have to make sure that the girl is compatible for him. Now the next issue which we are going to look at is with regards to looking at a particular girl. Now obviously in this day and age, what tends to happen is that you've chosen a girl, like you want to get married to this particular girl. So obviously your parents will try to arrange something for you, and if the girl's family give the go-ahead, they say okay, then what normally happens is that the boy or the groom, he will visit the girl and he will see the girl, and then after that, if he likes the girl, then the marriage will go forward. Now before we look at the slide which is in front of us, just one issue here, and that is that nowadays there is a custom that before you go and see the girl, you exchange photos with the girl, and like the girl's family will exchange photos with the boy's family. Okay? Now obviously the ruling of whether exchanging photos with the girl's family or with the boy's family, whether it's allowed or not, depends on whether taking pictures is allowed or not. Obviously that is like a different masla, different ruling in itself, that those scholars who say that you can take pictures, then obviously according to them you can exchange photos and nothing wrong with it. But those scholars who say that you cannot take pictures, you cannot take images of animated objects or any creation of Allah, then obviously in their eyes such a exchanging of photos would not be allowed. Okay, generally speaking, in the Hanafi Fiqh, it is considered unlawful to exchange photos. So therefore, that angle of exchanging photos with the girl should not be allowed. Okay. However, what you can do, just say for example, if you really want to see the girl on a photo, then what you can do is that you can ask the girl's family that, do you have a passport size photo of her? Because obviously, passport, you need to take photos for passport. So you could ask her that, do you have any passport size photo for her, of her? Obviously, passport size photo, it just shows the face and so on. So if they have the passport size photo, then you can exchange that. But you actually go out to a studio and then take a photo of yourself and then give it to the girl's family or vice versa, then that would not be allowed. But if you have a passport size photo of the girl or you have a passport size photo of yourself, then if you just exchange that, then leeway does exist. Okay. Now, looking at the prospective bride before you get married is one of the daunting things a person probably will feels in his life. Okay, it's like for example when you're taking a driving test and so on. So this is even more harder. Meeting your prospective wife, to meet her, then that is even more difficult. Okay, and to tell you that the meeting will actually go in a very you'll be very nervous, you'll be very tense. There will be so many there will be times where you won't be able to talk to her properly and so on. But the funny thing is that after it's over, and then inshallah if you do get married to her, then you will always refer back to that moment and you say that you remember when you were with me and you were like this and you were like that, or you were red and so on. You'll always joke about with it afterwards. But during that time it is quite difficult, and you do tend to be a bit tense and you tend to be a bit kind of awkward. The whole scenario is a bit awkward, and obviously it should be. Now, before we look at the ruling of this particular section, just some hadiths regarding the importance of looking at a prospective suitor. Okay, in some cultures, it is considered something bad looking at the girl. Okay, but when we look at the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we can see that it's actually a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's considered something praiseworthy and recommended to look at the girl before you get married to her. Now the hadith of Sahih al-Muslim narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah anhu, that he narrates that I was in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when a man came and informed him that he had contracted to marry a woman of the Ansar. So a man, he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I've decided to get married to a woman or to a girl from Ansar. Now Ansar, they are known literally as the helpers, and they are basically the people of Medina Munawwara. Those who welcomed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Medina Munawwara, those who helped Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are known as the Ansar. So this man, he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says that I have decided to get married to a woman of the Ansar. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied and said, did you look at her? Did you cast a glance at her? So this person replied by saying no. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, go and look at her, for there is something in the eyes of the Ansar. Meaning that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling that person to go and look at her. Okay? And what is meant by there is something in the eyes of the Ansar? When we look through the commentary of this particular hadith, there are some scholars have said that the Ansar, their eyes were like Chinese, or they had blue eyes. So it was like this. So obviously for the Arabs, this was like something rare, like to see a girl with a Chinese kind of eyes, then it's considered something like rare. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to this person that, look, because their eyes are a bit, or is like Chinese, or it's not like us, it's not like the general public or general people, so you may look at her and you may not like her. It's like, for example, if someone has some funny eyes or has some kind of funny nose, then when you look at her, then it may be so that when you looked at her, then you found the whole scenario, or you didn't find her pretty, or you didn't find it attractive, and you didn't think that she was the right woman for you. So therefore Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam encouraged him that, look, go and have a look at her, and then after that decide whether you want to get married to her or not. The second hadith also shows the importance of looking at a woman before you get married to her. And the hadith narrated by Sayyidina Mughira bin Shu'bah radhiyallahu anhu, that he proposed to a woman for marriage. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, look at her, for it may produce love between you. That initial meeting is very important. That initial meeting, when you see your wife or you see your prospective wife for the first time, that is the foundation for the marriage. If, for example, if the meeting doesn't go that well, you don't get that vibe that she wants to get married to you, then after that somehow, because of what your parents have said, what her parents have said, the marriage goes ahead, then that kind of, spoils the marriage. That kind of is the recipe for a very unhappy and for a very bitter marriage. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that go and look at her. When you look at her, when you speak to her, and you speak to her in a nice way, then you get this kind of vibe. Okay, vibe meaning that you get this kind of feeling that whether she's interested or not. Okay, obviously, if she's not interested, then you can tell straight away, and then in that situation, it's preferable that you don't go ahead with the marriage. But if for example, she is interested, you can see that she is interested in you, you can feel the vibe, then in that situation, you should go and look at her, for it may produce love between you. And the last hadith, also of Sunan Abu Dawood and Musnad Ahmad, Sayyidina Jabir anhu says that when one of you proposes to a woman for marriage, then if he is able to look at what will induce him to marry her, then he should do so, meaning that he should look at the girl, look at the prospective bride before getting married to her, and what will happen is that this will create love and muhabba and unity between the groom and the bride. So these were a few hadiths which I mentioned. Moving along further, there's some maslas regarding looking at the prospective suitor. Now the first masla is that there is nothing wrong in looking at someone one is intending to marry even with desire. Now, what's the first masala I'm trying to say is that when you are looking at a girl, then whilst looking at this particular girl with whom you intend to marry, if shahwa or desires are creating in your heart, meaning that you feel this kind of lust for this particular girl, then even then in that situation, it is still permissible for you to continue looking at her. Because obviously there is a good chance that you may marry her and so on. So therefore, whilst looking at her, if for example you get aroused or you're getting this erection and so on, then in that situation it is permissible for you to continue looking at her. The reason why is that it's actually mentioned in Al-Hidayah that in some situations, even though there may be shahwa, even though there may be desires, you can look at another woman. One of the situations is this, and another situation is that, for example, a qazi, a judge, when he wants to give a ruling out, so he may need to look at the woman. So if the qazi is looking at the woman and he's getting aroused and so on, then even then it is permissible for him to continue looking at the girl. So exactly same ruling applies for this number one here. Number two, it is not permitted to touch the face and hands of the woman even when one does not fear desire, for there is no real need for that. Now the second thing is that you can only look, or which says in rule number 3 as well, that permissibility is only to the hands and face. That you can only look at the girl's face and the girl's hands. Okay? You can't touch them. The main thing is that you just want to see her beauty, that whether she's attractive or not, and then by looking at her hand, you want to see her physical appearance, that whether she is fat, whether she is skinny, whether she is kind of medium height and so on. So that is the reason why you should look at those two things. Okay, so you can only look at those two parts of the body, and you cannot, for example, touch them. You cannot even ask her, or can I see the other parts of her body, or even ask description for the other types of other parts of the body. That is something which is not allowed, and that is something which is unlawful and haram in Islam. And the fourth ruling is that a woman may also look at the man whom she intends to marry, even if there is a fear of desire. Rather, this is more important. Okay. Now, let's look at it through the woman's side. For a woman, even if there is desire, okay, even if she fears that if I look at this man, then I'm going to get aroused as well, then even then it is still permissible and lawful for the woman to look at the husband, or to look at the prospective husband, and to look at the prospective groom. And the reason why is that it is very important for women to look at the prospective groom is that the husband will be able to divorce her whenever he wants if he dislikes her. But the wife cannot do that. Okay? Just for example, the husband, he looked at the girl and he thought to himself that, like, she looks okay, she looks attractive, she looks religious and so on. Then after that, when he gets married and he's living with her, then he looks at her and he thinks to himself, oh, she's not that attractive and so on, she's not that religious as I thought. Then the husband could just divorce his wife and that's it. Whereas if you look at it through the sister's side, then it is very important that for that meeting, that initial meeting, the sister, she kind of looks at the groom properly, and on top of that, she asks questions regarding the groom as well. That what are your religious background? Are you religious? What kind of books do you read and so on? To find more about the husband. Because obviously if the girl, she thought that the husband was religious, and then she gets married to the guy, and then after that she realizes that her husband isn't religious at all, then obviously these will cause problems and disputes later on. So therefore for the girl, this initial meeting or looking at a prospective suitor is something which is very, very important and something which is necessary. Because obviously if she doesn't, for example, if she gets married and then she realizes that, this bloke or this guy wasn't the right one for me, then very simply she's basically stuck with him unless he divorces her, or unless, for example, something happens. Okay, so it's very important on behalf of the girl that she looks at the prospective groom properly, and if she has any questions, then obviously she asks the groom those questions. Now the next slide is with regards to something known as where should you see, or where should the couple see each other. Obviously we looked at the ruling that it is mustahab and desirable for the groom, for the boy to look at the girl, and vice versa. Now the mas'ala we're going to look at is where should they or how should they look at each other. Now the mas'ala which is in front of us is that the couple, however, are not permitted to be alone in a closed room or go out together alone. Okay. Now when you go to see the girl, okay, there has to be at least someone there with the girl, or the very least, okay, the door has to be open. So for example, you're seeing the girl in her bedroom, then the door cannot be locked or closed or anything like that. Okay, the very least, the door has to be open, or even better, there is somebody with the girl. Okay. Now the reason why is because of the hadith, which can be found in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, where the Prophet ﷺ has said that when a man and a woman are together alone, there is a third presence, i.e. shaitan. Meaning that a man and a woman, they should not be left alone together. Why? Because the third person present there is shaitan, and shaitan will, put evil thoughts in the person's heart, in the person's mind, to do something bad, to do something unlawful. So the mas'ala is that the couple, okay, they have to be at least accompanied with someone, or the very least that if they are in a closed room, if they are seeing each other in a room and there's no one there, then the very least the door has to be open. Okay? This is the next paragraph, that it will not be permitted for the man and woman to remain alone in seclusion, i.e. khalwa, for there is no need for that. That the man and the woman, they cannot be alone together. Okay? Even though you may be saying that I tend to get married to her and so on, but that is intention. You are not married at the moment. So because you are not married at the moment, she is still considered as a ghair mahram. She is still considered as a strange woman. So therefore, all the rules with regards to strange woman, with regards to intermingling with the opposite gender also applies here as well. Okay. The meaning of being alone khalwa is when a man and a woman who are not immediate family members, i.e. mahram, remain alone in a room or place in a way that a third person is not easily able to enter upon them, or is not usually accessible to others. Now what is meant by khalwa? What is meant by a man and a woman being alone together? So it means that the man and a woman are alone in such a space or in such an area where a third person cannot easily enter. Okay? So for example, like in a room, as I said, so if the door is closed or if the door is locked, so a third person won't be able to enter. So therefore, to see a girl in a locked or in a closed room, then that would not be allowed and that would not be permitted. Okay? So the mas'ala is that they have to be in such a room, in a bedroom or in a sitting room where either the door is open, where there is someone outside just keeping an eye on them, so that nothing bad or nothing unlawful happens between the boy and the girl. And just lastly, I just mentioned with regards to selecting a partner and so on, that there is no dating or trying each other out before they commit to each other seriously. Now what does Islam say? Islam says that if you like a particular girl, then you should contact her, and then you should seek a meeting with her, and then see for the vibes whether she is the right girl for you or not, and then after that decide whether you want to go ahead with the marriage. In Islam, there is no such thing as dating. That you don't say to the girl's family, okay, I'll take her out for a week or so, or I'll take her out for a holiday, and then we'll see whether she's the right girl or not. Or there's no such thing as trying each other out. Let's just like have a period of 1 month. We'll just like date each other. We'll see each other and see whether you're the right girl for me. So there's nothing like that in Islam, because obviously, as I mentioned before, looked at in the boyfriend-girlfriend situation, these are something which is unlawful and haram in Islam. So there is to be no physical relationship whatsoever before the marriage. Okay, well, I'll just finish it for this week until here. Inshallah, next week we'll continue from persons with whom nikah is haram. If any brothers have any questions, then you could just ask me now. And any sisters, if you have any questions, then you could forward it to the sister who's there at the back. Do you have any questions? Yes. Yeah, the bride's younger sister, if she's like that age where, like basically she's immature, she's not baligh, then obviously there's nothing wrong with her, like you can have her there. But obviously if she's mature and if she's baligh, then obviously she should be covered, or if she is there, then obviously don't look at her. But if the bride's younger sister, there's nothing wrong with it. There has to be someone there preventing any kind of unlawful activities happening between yourself and the girl. Okay, before we should depart, the question. Okay, if somebody could give it up first. I'll just go over the question paper with you very quickly. The beginning of next week's lesson, inshallah, we'll go over the questions very briefly. But those of you who have the question paper in front of you, there are two issues which you need to discuss, meaning that which you need to look at. Firstly, as I said, of this fictional character called Zayd. Now, Zayd is 25 years old, and he's thinking of getting married. Now, the reason why he wants to get married is because there's always constant interaction with women. He's always meeting women and so on. So he's thinking to himself that, I think it's best that I get married soon. Okay? So obviously the rules which we have applied regarding the ruling of marriage, that whether it is obligatory, necessary, whether it is sunnah, muakkad and so on. So whatever you think, try to apply to the facts until there. Then after that, also Zayd, being a Pakistani, wants to get married to an Arab. So for example, he likes Arab women, so he wants to get married to an Arab girl. So obviously the rule which we have looked at, that whether an Arab girl can get married to a Pakistani boy or not. So obviously look at that particular issue and also tell me what is the ruling in this day and age. However, his parents want him to get married to a cousin from Pakistan. So obviously you need to look at that particular issue, okay? Now discuss whether it is permissible to talk or to contact a girl over the internet, bearing in mind he's not able to see her. So now you think to yourself that, even like emailing a girl, or even like texting a girl, or even talking to a girl over MSN or so on, would that be allowed or not? Even though you're not looking at her directly, but would that be just having those kind of interaction with that girl, would that be permissible or not? And the second question is with regards to these single Muslim internet sites. Like if you go on to www.singlemuslim.com and you see many women there. So now the second point you need to look at is that whether those kind of marriage internet sites are permissible or not, or whether it is permissible for Muslim sisters or Muslim brothers to put their picture there and and others, so that other people, other men can see them, whether that is allowed or not. And then answer the following questions. You could only answer the first two because the third one we haven't looked at that section yet. That is, what are the criteria laid down by Islam for selecting a partner? And number two, what is the wisdom of kafa'a and compatibility? Okay, so the answer, if you could just write it on the sheet which I've given. You don't have to write it on a separate piece of paper. The name, so just put your name down, and then obviously just answer the question, okay? It doesn't have to be an essay or anything like that. Just put some points and so on. That will be sufficient and that will be okay. We'll conclude for today, unless one of the Tosir Rahman just said,